Now if you're jumping into Diablo 4 for the first time, it can be very overwhelming. This is quite a sophisticated RPG, the talents and builds are far from simple, the game doesn't really explain what the equipment stats do very well, and there are a number of complex game systems that you have to learn. Fortunately today I'm going to be giving you my straight to the point, no bull guide for Diablo 4. We're going to focus on helping you understand the complicated stuff you'll encounter early on in the game, such as how talents work and how to build your character. What am I even supposed to do in this game? What quests and dungeons to do? What do certain stats do? Some are quite obvious, but other stats aren't even explained fully in-game and are quite complicated to understand. And we will cover everything when it comes to gear customization, upgrading, effects changing, gemming, and legendary aspects. We'll touch on the importance of alchemy, and finish off explaining what on earth is the Codex of Power and why it is important. So the talent builds in Diablo 4 at first glance can be quite complicated, especially if you're used to talent trees that are linear and go down like in World of Warcraft. But there's such an easy way to get all of the best builds for every single class and every single activity, whether it's leveling, grinding or boss killing, without the need to read any guides or YouTube videos. You can just do it in-game. You see, Mobalytics have made this totally free overlay app that now works for Diablo 4. As you can see, all you have to do is press tab and Q and then this overlay appears. Here you can select which class you are playing and there are lists of the best builds available for every class. These aren't just builds copied from a website, they are the best theory crafted builds from the community. As you can see, the legend himself, Bajira, has a build on here. The builds will go into more detail on what legendary aspects to focus on to complement the build, your stat priority, best gems, and even what to do with your Paragon board late game. It tells you absolutely everything you need to know. I'll never uninstall this app, to be honest, because it's so useful, especially since it can be used in other games like League of Legends, Valorant, Destiny 2 and more. The build I've been using is Don the Crown's Bleed build, so thanks Don, whoever you are, which is building into Rend, Lunging Strike and Leap. This is definitely the best way to level as a barbarian, as it gives you the most amount of maneuverability and you can leave dots on bosses that deal damage while you are focusing on dodging the mechanics. Mobalytics are actually sponsoring this video with a huge giveaway for people who download the app, with a chance to win a 26-inch $1.1 thousand worth statue of Inarius, a 24.5-inch $600 of Lilith, and 10 chances to win the Diablo 4 Collector's Edition. So check the description right now and get the app downloaded for free, because you'll be shooting yourself in the foot not doing it. This app is just a fountain of knowledge that saves you so much time, and it's totally free. So what on earth do you do in this game? Well, there are many different ways to play Diablo 4. At heart, this is a single-player RPG with a great storyline, but with optional semi-MMO features. You follow the main storyline until the main storyline requires a higher level than you currently are to complete the quest, and then you'll have to do side quests, extra dungeons, world events, etc. to level up in order to continue the main storyline. But at the end of the day, the game doesn't really force you to do anything. You can do as many side dungeons and side quests as you want, whenever you want. Then at endgame you unlock more content. You unlock world bosses that require a group of people to take down. You've got nightmare dungeons, which are much more difficult dungeons. Whispers of the Dead, which is cycling world quests that give extra rewards. You've got Helltide events, which are demon invasion events. You can also put the game into the Nightmare tier mode, which makes the world catch up in difficulty to the player. Now, if you guys like my Diablo videos and you want to see more, the best way you can tell me that is by subscribing to the channel. If enough people are subscribing when I do make these Diablo videos, I will continue to make them. Now let's cover stats and effects. So the core stats are fairly easy to understand, you just look at it in the game and it will tell you what it does. But there are some more complicated stats which just aren't explained in the game. And when I first jumped into Diablo in the beta, I had absolutely no idea what these stats did. Now the first one is Lucky Hit. Essentially all spells and abilities you have a built-in Lucky Hit, a chance to cause a bonus effect. It's basically like a proc effect. Now, on its own, this lucky effect won't do anything. because you need to actually obtain a lucky hit effect to trigger on your abilities. These will come from talents and then sometimes on items. On top of this, these lucky hit effects also have their own internal chance to occur. So let's say you've obtained 20% lucky hit chance from your gear and your talents. This means you have a 20% chance to cause a lucky hit. And let's say you have a lucky hit effect to drain your enemy's health, but the drain health effect on your gear piece only has in itself a 10% chance to occur. This means it's a double roll. You have to get the first 20% roll to occur, but then also, when that's hit, the 10% chance to occur after the first roll. So essentially, 2 dice rolls happening at once. Remember to enable advanced tooltips to see what your lucky hit chance is. Another complicated stat is Fortify. Now Fortify is essentially like a second health pool. You generate it with abilities and it will deplete when you take damage. It will take damage at the same rate as your life. And the point of it is, while you have Fortify points, you take 10% less damage until your Fortify points are 0. You can see whether you have Fortify by looking at the faint red glow on the inner circle of your health circle. Now let's talk about Overpower. You have a 3% chance to overpower by default, but sometimes talents can cause you to get a guaranteed Overpower. Overpower, like a crit, will deal 50% more damage but also add your current life, not your total life, and Fortify points to the damage. We also have Thorns. This deals damage to enemies when they attack you, but it won't occur on their dot damage, unless the dot damage spell that they use causes initial damage. Unstoppable is an effect that basically means you are totally immune to CC. What on earth is the difference between crit strike and crit damage? So normally you deal 50% extra damage on crits, but you can increase this percentage. For example, you can increase it to 70%, so now you deal 70% extra damage on your critical strikes. So those are the complicated ones, the rest are explained fairly clearly in the game, just be sure to read the tooltips. Now let's talk about everything when it comes to gear. There's a number of different systems to alter gear in the game. Let's start with the basics. Items have affixes, which are basically stats. I'd rather just call them stats because that's just a much easier word to call them. Magic blue items have 1 to 2, rare items can have 2 to 6, and legendary items can have 4, but will also have a legendary aspect. And then you've got these unique items, which you'll see much later on in the game, that have a unique and interesting ability. Legendary aspects on legendary gear are usually an extra bonus effect unique to your class. So firstly, the Oculus can change the stats on your gear. You can choose one stat on a piece of gear that you don't want and then randomly re-roll it into another stat. It's random, but you can keep re-rolling it as many times as you want, it just costs gold. When you find legendaries in a game, they obviously have an aspect on them, but you can actually extract that aspect, which will create a separate aspect item in your bag that you can then reapply to another item, a rare or legendary item. So you can effectively make your own legendary items on rare pieces of gear. You can also upgrade your gear at a blacksmith. It will raise armor rating for armor, weapon damage for weapons, and will also raise the stats of the item. You can add gem sockets to gear that don't have gem sockets by going to the jeweler. You need gold and a scattered prism, which is a rare drop from difficult content like world bosses. You can also combine lower ranked gems into higher ranked gems. You will find all of these services in major hubs like towns, so be sure to check them all out to understand their mechanics, as it is really important to optimize your character's power. The Alchemist is very important, mainly for upgrading your health potions. You should visit every 10 levels to get your pots upgraded. You'll need gold and materials to do this. You can also make elixirs that are very useful for boss fights to increase the resistances and armor of the player. The Codex of Power is a book where you collect legendary aspects which can be later imprinted onto gear that you choose. These legendary aspects are obtained when you complete certain dungeons. And now I definitely covered all of the very complicated and overwhelming things that are likely to confuse and irritate new players in Diablo 4. Moving on from here, we'll be covering the more advanced stuff in the game. And I wanted this video to be short and sweet for beginners, but let me know in the comment section if that's something that you want to see in the future. But until my next video, ciao.